Everybody get this?
Yeah. Makes sense, actually.
My eyes are kind of blurry.
Answers in Genesis. There are 65 other books in the Bible. Why so much focus on Genesis? And the guy responds on the left there, you believe Genesis? Ha! I have serious doubts about Genesis. If I can't trust the first book of the Bible, why should I trust the rest of it? And then the guy replies, there's a good answer to your question.
Mm-hmm.
We have a choice. We can accept, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1, or our universe was started from an infinitesimal small dot that exploded and turned into what we have now, taking billions of years doing it. They call that the Big Bang. Our scientists have worked very hard in figuring that out. And they're convinced that that's the way it is, although they have no proof that that is true. We've come to a conclusion where we have to decide what we're going to believe spiritually and physically. This is KWPB, Low Power FM, Newport, Oregon, and Yaquina Bay Chapel, April 13th, Oops. October what? 20th.
Try August.
August, yeah.
August 20th. With Joncas, teacher. Oh, how bad is that? This is an introduction to Genesis. We will be discussing today just an introduction. We will hardly even get into Genesis. But Don and I, just a handful of weeks ago, were discussing what we're going to do next. And I'm sorry, Don. You're doing Jeremiah, correct?
Yeah.
He wanted to do Jeremiah, and I wanted to do Genesis, but I was very willing to do whatever Don decided to do. But I told Don at the time, I says, it's going to take us 4 years, literally 4 years to go through Jeremiah. And honestly,
It's right up your alley.
I love it. Honestly, though, I don't think we're going to be here 4 years from now. I really believe that the rapture is going to occur.
They're singing victory in Jesus.
No kidding. Amen. We'll be with him in heaven and we will be gone off this earth. So, but I wanted to teach Genesis, because if you don't believe in Genesis, you're going to lose what the rest of the Bible says. And we will get into the details of how that works and why and everything. So Don and I decided to do both. 1 week he'll work from Jeremiah, the next week I will work from Genesis. And we'll just work the schedule and see, play it by ear and see how it goes. Right, Don?
Yep, yeah. And one of the big reasons I still believe we were really supposed to go into Jeremiah is because of how everything we were going through at the time lined up with Isaiah. And I believe we're still in that time period as far
Correct.
as what's going on in the world. And Jeremiah is another look at it, and God calling, the people back more, and I think it's still needed very much so.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll probably still take you 2 years to do that. And I think it's a very valuable tool. And I also think this is a very...
Yes, I agree with you there too. I believe, you know, because if you throw out Genesis or, well, maybe it didn't work exactly that way, you know, and then you start having doubts about, you know, what we hear from God in Jeremiah, what we hear from God in the New Testament, and that. So.
Yeah, well, as all of you know, I'm the head of this new group called the Genesis Group. In fact, you can go online and just look up the Genesis Group website. That's our. You can put in .com, .org, but you'll get some really strange stuff. And honestly, it has nothing to do with all this other stuff. Has nothing to do with what's going on in the Bible. I don't know how I got that way, but it's the Genesis Group website. And in there, I have a presentation that my friend Jason and I will be presenting to a church up in Lincoln City here. Actually, it's going to be November 5th. So, why do we study Genesis? As I said earlier, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1. Do we believe that? Or not? I mean, many people just, they start scoffing as soon as they hit that. Because they believe in evolution and the Big Bang. But the Bible teaches us that the earth was created by God in 6 days. 6 24-hour days. Not eons, not epochs, not billions of years, but in 6 days, about 6,000 years ago.
So until fairly, I mean, it not just recently, but within the last 5 years or so, I used to think that it was because God says like 1 day is like 1,000 years.
Correct, and that is actually something I will discuss later on in Genesis, because that is something that people misapply to this. And the one thing that we know, and just very briefly, days in the Hebrew means days, 24-hour days. Not eons, not epochs, not...
Something else in there I seen that made me realize, no, that meant day, because...
Yeah, the Bible is very clear in what it says. God intended it to be clear. He did not do what the, quote, scientists of today say. And we will get into the discussion of what many scientists are saying about the Bible and about how it is true. And there is evidence in the world. God said, just look around and see. Just look. But man, starting considerable amount of time ago, started disbelieving it. And we'll get into that here in just a moment. But we're going to go through Genesis 1, 2, and 3. Genesis 2 is the creation of Adam and Eve. Genesis 3 is the fall of Adam and Eve. That's where sin came into the world. And y'all remember propitiation. Can anybody tell me what it means?
God taking the punishment we deserve. Jesus.
Say that again. That
Jesus
is correct.
Taking the punishment we deserve. Stabbing and taking the punishment we deserve.
Correct. That's correct. And if it wasn't for the fall of Adam and Eve, he would not have had to do that. And we will be discussing the flood, the age of the earth and why. But for right now, let's back up in our history. This is going to be a little bit of history. About in the 1600s, a movement came about called the Enlightenment. And the results for the Christian faith were actually pretty atrocious. But there were a lot of good things that came out of the Enlightenment. During that period of time, the separation of church and state was suggested. Because back then, and especially in the 1700s, it's like there was the Church of England that was officially the church, and the state dictated what the church would do. That was not a good thing. And unfortunately, in the Roman Catholic Church, a lot of them, they ran the state. That was not a good thing. So we ended up with our, because of that, with our federal government. The government we have here in the United States and the Constitution as it was set up. This, by the way, our government is not a democracy. It's a federation. And that came out of the Enlightenment movement. But many other things came out of that were not good. Well, one of the things that came good, I mean, is the science, as a lot of the science as we see it now, like, my mind just went blank. The guy that, quote, invented gravity.
Newton.
Newton, yeah, Newton physics. Newton was a man who absolutely loved Jesus. I mean, he loved the Lord, he loved the Bible, and he studied it. But he also came up with Newtonian physics. He came up with, not geometry, but, well, think of it, higher mathematics that people use to do things. I mean, through science, we've literally gone to the moon. I mean, these are things that are good. They're fine. But they also resulted in a lot of other things. It developed into what is commonly known as evolution, and that the earth is old. There were 3 men in Britain who promoted the ideas of an old earth. One was James Hutton, and in 1760 he wrote a book, and he became known as the father of modern geology. However, what he taught is that the world was created in a very, very long period of time. He'd gone out and looked at some rocks and decided, oh, these had to have taken a very, very long time to occur. And he wrote about it. And unfortunately, he wrote about it in the 1830s, everybody caught on to that. And they decided that must be the way it is. And that, what he wrote about, became known as uniformitarianism. In other words, everything that you see today is everything that has occurred going back millions of years. In order for the things that we see now, it would have taken a long period of time at the rate everything's happening now. They assumed everything is happening at this rate, and it is not. It did not. Another man, Charles Lyell, and in 1830, he popularized Hutton's uniformitarian and deep time in his book, The Principles of Geology. Now, one young man, guess who?
The one you just said.
No, Charles Darwin.
Oh.
Charles Darwin had Charles Lyell's book. As a young man, he studied it intensively. In fact, he took it with him on the Beagle on his big trip around when he got to the Galapagos. How is that pronounced?
I think, yeah.
Galapagos Islands?
Galapagos. Yeah.
Anyway, he looked at some birds over there and saw they had big beaks, and he decided, well, this came about over a very long period of time, and he came up with this theory of evolution, where everything living came from a single cell. And with that, it has been taught in schools, in colleges. When I was in the first grade, I'm 70, almost 76 years old. In the first grade, I was taught evolution. And I've had that literally crammed down through my throat for my whole lifetime. In school, in college, on TV, even the news.
Now you can't even go to the lighthouse without reading all that.
Oh yeah, everything has done that.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It all talks about evolution.
Millions of years. This happened 150,000 years ago. This happened 1.5 million years ago. In the end times, they say they will believe a lie. And I want to say something to you and to anybody who's listening. Please don't go out and tell your teacher that they're telling you a lie. You're not going to get through to them because they believe the lie. All they are doing is repeating a lie. And the lie started back in the 1700s. And they have grown since. And they have, hey, look, Satan is real. And his demons are real. And he's gotten through to these people. And he's used them to give us a lie. So, Charles Darwin wrote the book on the origin of species. And a lot of people don't know this, but the complete name of that book is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Just think about that.
Favorite races.
That's why we're
Darwin was one of the biggest racists that ever has been. And they worship him. Oh yeah, Darwinism. Actually, he stole these ideas from other people. And they today, in school, on TV, they claim that this whole process is scientific and it is fact and it has been proven. Did any of your parents, fathers, serve in World War II? Mine did. The only reason I know that is I was told that. And I believe it. we have to be careful of who's talking to it and who's telling us what. That is just the physical things that they talk about that they are trying to convince us are true. And in so doing, when we go to the Bible and it says it was created in 6 days, they say, no, 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 no. It's been proven that it took billions of years. And how do we argue with that?
Well, how can you prove billions of years anyway? I mean, there's just no way that you can prove billions of years.
And you only, maybe if you're lucky, live 70, 75 years.
Do you believe in the Great War of the United States between the North and South?
Are you talking about the Civil War?
Yeah. Do you believe in that?
It happened, yeah.
Yeah, I know. But you weren't alive then. That's history.
Yeah.
That is history. When you look back that far, that is what is history. And if you don't have somebody who's seen it, that's what it is. And that's called historical science. So we have the evidence before us. We've got the world that we can see. And you've got one group of people who are looking at this history and claiming what they're saying about it is true when there is absolutely no way they were there. They have in their brains come up with this idea on how it occurred. But they have absolutely no evidence. But we have this. We have an eyewitness that tells us what happened, and that's God Himself, if you believe in Him. But they do not. We have now literally hundreds of doctorate degree scientists who are looking at creation and looking at the different kinds of things that show that the earth was created in just 6 days, about 6,000 years ago. And they have immense amounts of evidence to support that. Now, it's very interesting. God has left things unproven. Dr. Weiss, who wrote a book, and I really like this man, that said he did that deliberately. We can't prove that there's a God. Neither can they prove that everything took billions of years. But if you step back and look at the evidence, it becomes very clear that what the Bible says about it is correct.
And when you look at theirs, you see there's things they missed that were in the Bible that would have made a difference in their, coming up with something. Just like the flood. If they discount the flood or didn't take that into consideration, well then just the regular environment's going to take that long to make the rocks and stuff like they are. And
yeah, but the geologists that are doctorates degrees who are young Earth people have shown how the Grand Canyon, every single layer is from a tsunami that has swept across and dumped. And I better not go there because that'll take a couple hours on its own. But spiritually, what they did has devastated the Christian faith. There was a man, and in 1806, DeWitt is his name, William DeWitt. He wrote his paper for his graduate degree that there were 4 authors for Genesis. This came out of and because of the Enlightenment. He did that, and in 1883, Julius Wellhausen, he was a German biblical scholar. He was credited as the originator of the documentary hypothesis, which takes those 4 authors that was suggested by Wilhelm and said that Genesis could not have been written by Moses. They didn't have writing back then. You know, that they live on the assumption that nothing miraculous can happen. They live on the assumption that man came from an ape, that he grew up and he became a caveman, and he was an ignorant guy.
Do that again.
I'm beginning to wonder. Are you sure?
Yeah.
They assume that man has been going through evolution and has been growing better and better and better.
And just look at us now.
Yeah, but look at us now. No way.
Going.
We have been devolving. But again, I've got to stop, because I'm going to discuss this stuff in great detail later. The documentary hypothesis is what I was talking about. Somebody decided Moses could not have written the first 5 Bibles of the book. He just couldn't have done it because things were in there that he shouldn't have known about. And the only way those things could have been known about is by somebody from some later date saw it and then was able to write about it. They just threw out the miraculous period. They threw out Moses. Moses was an extremely intelligent man. To give you an idea of how this went, who knows Thomas Jefferson? Of him. Yeah. The Thomas Jefferson. He wrote the Jefferson Bible. By the way, that was never published. But he created this Bible by literally taking a razor blade and going through his Bible and cutting out anything that was miraculous, and taking the stuff that he wanted and rearranging it in his Bible, and it became known as the Jefferson Bible. He got rid of everything that Christ did that was miraculous, including his resurrection.
He also had slaves.
That's a totally different subject.
I know.
True. I mean, it was these thought processes that led us to where we are now. And I say they, those who have accepted this stuff, are doing everything that they can to discount the Bible. They want to create us without any God. And we're going to, over the next several months, hit in detail every single part of it. Here shortly, I'm going to read the entirety of chapter 1. But we're going to do chapters 1, 2, and 3, One again is the creation, 6 days. 2 is the creation of Adam and Eve. And 3 is the fall of Adam and Eve, which is extremely important that we know and understand. And then 6, 7, and 8 are the flood. And we will see how the whole world, as it is now, came about because of the flood. So let's just read chapter 1, and I will be done. Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. By the way, when we get into this, I will be using the New Living Translation, but I will also be supplementing that with the New American Standard Bible. So, 3, then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the first day. Verse 6. Then God said, "Let there be space between the waters, to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters of the earth." And that is what happened. God made the space to separate the waters of the earth from the waters of the heavens. In verse 8, God called the space sky, and evening passed and morning came, marking the second day.
That's what changed my opinion on how long a day was. For the good.
Yeah, well, tell us why.
Where it says, good, yeah, there we go. And evening passed and morning came, marking the second day. But so there it tells us, that the evening and morning makes the time period. And not
Correct.
1,000 years each.
Correct, absolutely. Yeah, and every one of these ends the same way.
Mm-hmm.
God is very specific when he talks about a day. Not only does a day mean a 24-hour period, but he says, and evening passed and morning came, marking the second day. He repeatedly said what he meant. Verse 9, then God said, "Let the waters beneath the sky flow together into one place, so dry ground will appear." And that is what happened. Verse 10, God called the dry ground land, and the waters seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant, and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds will then produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came." And that is what happened. The land produced vegetation, all sorts of seed-bearing plants and trees, and seed-bearing fruit. Their seeds produce plants and trees of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed and morning came, the third day. 14. Then God said, "Let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years." And you guys, I am so tempted to just go into this and start explaining it. But let's wait until we get to there. But no. 15, let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth. And that was what happened. God made two great lights, the larger one to govern the day, and the smaller one to govern the night. And listen to this. He also made the stars. When we look at the universe now and see what's out there, and he just says, and he also made the stars.
Yeah, just as a second thought or something.
Yeah. 17, God set these lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the fourth day. Verse 20, then God said, let the waters swarm with fish and other life. Let the skies be filled with birds of every kind. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that scurries and swarms in the water, and every sort of bird, each producing offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 22, then God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. Let the fish fill the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening, and evening passed, and morning came, marking the fifth day. Verse 24, then God said, let the earth produce every sort of animal, each producing offspring of the same kind, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and wild animals. And that is what happened. God made all sorts of wild animals, livestock and small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. And then God said, let us make human beings in our image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground. Verse 27, so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female. Note, he created them. Then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. 29. Then God said, look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth and all the fruit trees for your food. And I have given every green plant as food for all the wild animals, the birds of the sky, the small animals that scurry along the ground, everything that has life. And that is what happened. In verse 31, then God looked over all he had made and saw that it was very good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the sixth day. That's the end of Genesis chapter 1. However, I believe that the first 3 verses in Genesis 2 should have been in chapter 1. 2:1. So the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation. So he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from all the work of creation. And I'd like to say something right now. He did it in 6 days and rested on the seventh. He could have spoken it all into existence in one instant, but he didn't. He took 6 days because we live by days, and we have a 7-day week. And people, I mean, throughout history, they've tried to change that, and it's never worked.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. So, that's chapter 1.
I like it. I found it interesting that where it says, "Let us," capital U.
Correct. That is absolutely something that I will be discussing the next time I teach.
Yeah.
Lord, thank you in Jesus' name. This is KWPB FM Newport, Oregon, and Yaquina Bay Chapel with Joe Joncas, teacher.